Hey there. Tonight, we're not talking pyramids, gods, or golden tombs. We're talking real life in ancient Egypt, not as Cleopatra, not as some sacred priest walking around in scented oils. No, tonight, you're just you, average, broke, sweaty, dropped into a mud brick house with no plumbing, no privacy, and a prayer that the scarab beetle under your bed isn't carrying a curse. Before we dive in, take a second to dim the lights. Maybe grab a blanket or turn on a fan, something to remind you that you live in a time with air conditioning, because once we start, there's no going back. And by the end of this, you might be thanking your Wi Fi router like it's a minor deity. Because here's the thing, ancient Egypt wasn't designed for comfort, it was built for survival. And even that was a stretch. If you weren't harvesting grain from sunrise to heat stroke, you were dodging temple taxes, mosquito borne curses, or some overzealous official measuring your roof for divine alignment. Break a tooth, you're chewing garlic, wrapped in linen and hoping it doesn't get infected. Forget to leave an offering at the local shrine. Don't worry, the gods won't, and neither will your neighbor who swears your bad luck is contagious. One wrong move, one forgotten ritual, one angry priest, and suddenly you're on the wrong side of a crocodile's appetite. This isn't a postcard from history. It's a day in the life, and you're about to live it. Waking up in a mud brick house. Along the Nile, you wake up before the sun does, not because you're eager to seize the day, but because something just crawled across your foot and you're too afraid to check what it was. Your sleeping mat, more of a flattened reed rug than a mattress, smells faintly of sweat, smoke, and old grain. The walls around you are made of dried mud, cracked from the heat, and holding just enough structural integrity to stay upright for now. You can hear goats braying outside and someone coughing through the wall, probably your cousin, or possibly someone you didn't even know lived in your house. Privacy isn't really a concept here. Neither is personal space. The room is dark, but not cool. The Nile breeze doesn't reach this far in, and you're already sweating, despite doing absolutely nothing. Your blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one, is stiff with dust and sleep. If you're unlucky, it's also home to a few guests, fleas, lice, maybe a beetle or two. You brush your arm and find what you hope is just a grain of barley. Your back aches from sleeping on a floor harder than your neighbor's heart. And the roof? That's just palm branches lashed together and praying it doesn't rain, which thankfully, in Egypt, it almost never does. But dust? Oh, dust is your constant companion. In your hair, in your eyes, in places you'd rather not think about. You sit up, rub your face, and notice that your water jar is empty. Again, either it evaporated overnight or someone borrowed it. Either way, your morning now starts with thirst and suspicion. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows. Someone else yells back at it. You haven't even stood up yet, and you already want to lie back down. But there's work to do. There's always work to do. And in ancient Egypt, nobody cares how well you slept. You open your eyes to the familiar sensation of your eyelids sticking together. Sweat, not sleep, is the glue. It's still dark, the kind of dark that isn't peaceful or quiet, but thick and impatient. In a few minutes, the sun will creep over the Nile's horizon like a vengeful god with no chill. And when it does, this little oven you call a home will go from stuffy to uninhabitable. You have no clock, but you don't need one. Your body already knows. Time to wake up, time to survive. Your home isn't a palace, it isn't even a proper house. It's a one-room mud brick box baked by centuries of sun and patched with whatever you or your neighbor could find. Reeds, cracked pottery, old fabric, prayers. The walls are thick, earthen, and hold onto heat like a curse. There's no window, just a hole near the top for ventilation, which mostly functions as a highway for flies and gossip. Your bed? You wish. It's a fraying reed mat that smells like damp socks and goat breath. You're not sure how many generations it's passed through, but it probably has stories of its own and secrets, especially with what's currently nesting in it. Something scratches beneath you. Maybe it's a beetle. Maybe it's that mouse again. You try not to panic. If you swat at it, it might leave, or it might bite. And if it bites, there's no hospital, no antibiotics, no first aid, just you, a linen rag, and the faint hope the gods are feeling generous today. Spoiler, they usually aren't. You sit up slowly. The air inside the house is already warm, thick, unmoving. No breeze, no mercy, just heat radiating off the walls, like the sun is trying to cook you from the inside out. You're soaked in sweat, though the day hasn't even begun. Your mouth is dry, bone dry. You look around for the water jug. Maybe it survived the night without being emptied by your brother, your uncle, or that freeloading neighbor who treats your home like it's a free hostel with extra lice. It didn't. The jug is empty. Again, you suppress the urge to scream. You'll have to walk to the nearest communal well before breakfast just to keep your kidneys from shriveling into raisins. And that's assuming the well isn't dry, the line isn't long, or the water hasn't been mysteriously off lately, possibly because someone sacrificed the wrong kind of bird at the wrong kind of shrine. Again, you're still barefoot. Of course you are. Sand sticks to the bottoms of your feet, already damp with sweat. Your sandals are over by the door, or rather, the hanging fabric that separates your home from the outside world. One of them is missing. Fantastic. Probably stolen by a dog or a cousin. At this point, there's no difference. The roof above you groans softly as the day begins to press down. It's a mash of palm fronds tied together with rope, designed to shade you from the elements, though. It mostly just collects dust and drops it into your mouth at midnight. You coughed in your sleep again, the dry kind of cough that rattles deep in your chest and reminds you you're probably inhaling several centuries worth of dried river silt and mold, and maybe the top layer of your roof, which is now in your lungs. You wipe your face on the corner of your tunic, an off-white, sweat-stained cloth that may have once belonged to someone else. It smells like yesterday's sweat and tomorrow's regret, but you keep it anyway. Fabric is expensive. Besides, everyone smells like this. Everyone except the priest's son, who somehow always smells like lotus blossoms and smug entitlement. You wonder briefly what it must be like to wake up in linen sheets next to an oil lamp and a full water jug. Then you remember you're not rich, you're not holy, you're just here in a box of dust, heat, and grinding repetition. The sounds of the village are starting to bleed through the wall. A baby wailing, someone shouting about stolen grain, a donkey braying like it's possessed. Life, loud and chaotic, doesn't wait for you to get your life together. You groan, you ache, you scratch your scalp, and pick out a flea. And now that you're properly awake, it's time to face the next part of your morning, getting out of this house alive. But before you move, you sit still for just 1 second longer, just one breath, because even though you're sticky, itchy, thirsty, and already exhausted, you're still alive. And in ancient Egypt, that counts as a win. You stretch. Bad idea. Every joint pops like a worn out reed basket. You're not even 30, but your spine disagrees. You rub your eyes, sand in the corners again, and sit up fully, dreading the part of the day where you pretend to be clean. Because in ancient Egypt, you don't get clean. You just get less dirty for a few hours. There's no mirror in your house. Why would there be? Your reflection isn't something you want to see right now. If you really want a glimpse of your morning face, you could head to the nearest water basin, squint into the muddy ripples, and try not to scream. But first, pest control. Your body is a buffet. Mosquitoes, lice, and fleas have all filed their complaints. Delicious, but a bit dry today. You scratch your arm. Big mistake. Now there's a welt. And no, there's no salve. There's garlic. Garlic fixes everything, supposedly, but all it really does is make you smell like fear wrapped in bad breath. You shuffle toward the door. The floor's made of packed dirt, still cool from the night, though in an hour it'll be baking hot and full of footprints, animal droppings, and the occasional chicken invasion. The house creaks around you. Your cousin might still be asleep in the corner, or maybe he slipped out early to steal someone else's bread. Good for him. That's initiative. You grab a small clay jar from the wall, a kind of homemade perfume. It's not perfume in the romantic sense. It's a desperate blend of oil, herbs, maybe a touch of resin from the temple trash pile. You rub it into your armpits like hope. It doesn't make you smell good. It makes you smell less offensive. That's enough. You're not going for seduction. You're going for, please don't exile me from the marketplace. Now comes the part where you clean yourself. You step outside into the dust, heavy morning. The Nile is nearby, but not close enough for a lazy rinse. You don't have private plumbing. You have a communal basin in the alley, shared by at least a dozen other people and frequented by birds who do unspeakable things in the water. Still, you ladle a bit of water over your hands, cold, gritty, questionably holy. You splash your face, which wakes you up slightly, but mostly just moves the dirt around, dirt around. A neighbor, old, bent, and constantly scowling, walks past and mutters something about your unwashed soul. He does this every morning. You nod, respectfully. You have no idea what he said. You think it was a curse. You move on. Next, your teeth. You don't have a toothbrush. Nobody does. You have a frayed twig, probably acacia, which you chew until the fibers spread out like a tiny broom. Then you scrape. Your gums bleed a little. That's normal. Everyone's teeth are slowly eroding from the grit in the bread. Even pharaohs die with abscesses. You spit into the dirt. That's your dental care. Done. Then there's hair. Your head is shaved, or close to it. Lice aren't fashion conscious. Many Egyptians keep it short, or wear wigs if they're rich. You are not rich. You rub some more oil into your scalp to keep it from flaking off like sun-baked clay. It mostly succeeds. You still itch. Now comes the spiritual side. You turn toward the east because that's where the sun is. Ra's domain, the god of the morning, of light, of beginnings. You whisper a quick prayer. It's more habit than belief at this point. Oh, great Ra, thank you for this day. Please don't smite me, drown my crops, or let my neighbor's goat break into my house again. You light a tiny bit of incense, a smuggled remnant from a temple festival weeks ago. You wave it in the air, hope the gods are pleased, and then cough as it burns unevenly and releases more smoke than scent. It's the thought that counts. Probably you return inside for your one real luxury, a cleanish tunic, linen, hand-woven, probably made by your aunt's cousin's daughter. It's not bleached, it's not pretty, but it's better than the one you slept in, which is now hanging over the door, trying and failing to dry out in the humid morning air. By now, the street outside is waking up. You hear voices, lots of them, children yelling, animals screaming, someone already haggling over fish that smells like yesterday's river rot. A vendor is calling out about flatbread. You'd kill for flatbread. Actually, no. You'd trade a full day's work for flatbread and a bit of goat cheese. But you can't afford to eat yet. You've got chores. Before that, though, there's one last ritual, the most sacred, the most vital, the one passed down through generations, emptying the night jar. Your chamber pot sits proudly in the corner, like a smug little symbol of human indignity. It's half full, heavy, sloshing. You carry it outside, trying not to gag, trying not to trip, trying not to imagine what would happen if you spilled it on your feet. You dump it in the designated trench behind the neighbor's house. Then you walk away, pretending that your life has dignity. And just like that, your morning routine is over. You're slightly cleaner, slightly hungrier, and deeply aware that everything you've done so far was just to prepare for more pain. You haven't even started work yet, but at least you survived the rituals. You made your offerings. You bathed in sand and sarcasm. That counts. You step outside, and the air hits you like a kiln door slamming open. It's barely sunrise, and already it feels like the gods left the oven on overnight. Your tunic clings to your back like a wet napkin. Sand crunches beneath your feet, even inside your sandals, which you found after all, though one of them now smells like donkey pee. You'll deal with that later, or not. Hygiene is more of a suggestion these days. The village is waking up in layers. First come the animals, goats bleating, donkeys braying, chickens erupting into fights over nothing. Then the humans, kids yelling, babies crying, adults already arguing about water rights, boundaries, and whose goat trampled whose onions. There's no such thing as a quiet morning here. Everything is noise, dust, and chaos stacked on top of a hangover made of sand. You nod to your neighbor. He nods back. Neither of you smile. It's too early for hope. Across the narrow street, a woman pours water into a basin and glares at you like you owe her grain, which, in fairness, you might. Your cousin was supposed to pay her back last week, and now he's gone fishing, which could mean anything from ran away to got arrested to literally eaten by a crocodile. You consider explaining, then you don't. She already made a doll that looks suspiciously like you and stuck reeds into its chest. You nod again, lower this time. The dust kicks up around your ankles as you move. It's everywhere, in your eyes, in your mouth, in your soul. Egypt may be the gift of the Nile, but it's wrapped in 1,000 layers of powdered grit. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the heat is already heavy, less like air and more like a weight pressing against your face. You wipe your brow, more sweat, more sand. Congratulations. You've made it 10 feet from your front door, and you already need another bath you can't afford. You head toward the public well, joining a small crowd of equally unwashed and equally annoyed villagers. Everyone's clutching clay jugs. Everyone's pretending not to eye each other's containers like it's some kind of water-based social currency, which it is. You spot a scribe's assistant in the line ahead. His jar is painted. Yours is chipped. His tunic is whiter. Yours is brownish. He's smug. You are sticky. While you wait, you overhear conversations. Someone's cousin has a boil that won't go away. Someone else saw a snake in the temple courtyard. A woman claims she dreamt of a blue lotus, and now everyone's debating whether it means fertility, pestilence, or both. Someone sneezes. A priest mutters a quick anti-demon incantation. Everyone shuffles a step away from the sneezer, just in case. Your turn at the well comes. The pulley squeals like a dying animal as you lower the rope. The bucket splashes, vanishes into the gloom, and comes back half full, already tinged with silt and something that looks like algae, but might be worse. You don't care. You drink. It tastes like warm sadness and ancient frog spit, but it's wet, and that's enough. Heading back, you dodge a group of kids chasing a stray cat. The cat wins. A cart rolls past, pulled by a half-asleep ox and driven by a man who's been yelling since dawn. You get hit in the leg by a splinter from the cartwheel. No blood, but it stings. Infection is a casual hobby here. You suck your teeth, whisper a quick curse, and keep walking. As you pass the local temple, you hear the morning chants. The priests are up, as always, clean, perfumed, and acting like their feet don't touch the dirt. They wear white, real white, not, I tried to wash this in the river, and now it's beige. White, actual linen, bleached and starched, and ironed with incense. You glance down at your own tunic, which smells like yesterday's sweat mixed with crushed garlic and something suspiciously moldy. You look back up and keep walking. A child tugs your sleeve, begging for a fig. You don't have one. You offer him a shrug and a look of mutual suffering. He shrugs back and moves on. That's the entire economy of the poor in ancient Egypt, traded shrugs and shared regrets. Suddenly, the town crier calls out a public notice. Taxes are going up again. Apparently, the latest offering to the sun god didn't burn properly, and now everyone's expected to pay for another, larger, more expensive one. You wonder if the gods ever get tired of being flattered. Probably not. Being divine seems like a pretty sweet gig compared to carrying limestone blocks or collecting bird droppings for fertilizer. You finally make it home, or what passes for home. A cracked wall, a mat, a jug of water that's now already lukewarm, and the knowledge that this was just the beginning of your day. Work starts soon, the kind of work that turns your spine into gravel and your hands into cracked leather. You'll be lucky if you make it to sunset without a heat stroke, snake bite, or public humiliation from a passing official who thinks your face looks lazy. But for now, you sit down, you sip, you breathe, and in that tiny moment, surrounded by noise, heat, and chaos, you manage to feel something like peace, even if it's just the temporary kind. You want to feel clean. That's cute. Ancient Egypt laughs in your face. Because here's the reality: hygiene isn't a luxury here, it's a war, one you fight daily with broken tools, communal buckets, and sheer stubbornness. You smell like smoke, onions, and fermented river water, and that's your good day. On bad days, you could knock out a camel just by lifting your arm. It starts with sweat, always sweat. Egypt is hot, not beach vacation hot, but am I inside the sun? Hot. You start sweating the second you wake up, and you don't stop until long after the stars are out. There's no breeze. There's no relief. Your linen tunic soaks through before breakfast, and you'll wear it anyway because you don't have a backup. Laundry is done in the Nile by beating clothes against rocks until they surrender. Your tunic gave up 2 months ago. You try to wash your hands before meals, not because anyone's watching. There's no judgment here. Everyone's filthy. But because your hands have touched goats, clay, questionable neighbors, and whatever passed for a toilet last night. You scoop water from a jar with your fingers, trying not to think about who else used it. No soap, just grit and hope. You rub your hands together until they squeak. That squeak means you're clean. At least, that's the story you tell yourself. Your feet, hopeless, cracked, caked in dust, probably home to some kind of fungal deity by now. You wash them when you remember, or when someone comments on the smell, which is rare, because again, everyone stinks. Even the priests, though they pretend otherwise. They cover it with myrrh and rose oil, sure, but scratch beneath the surface, and there's a man who hasn't seen a bath in weeks. A bath in weeks. Speaking of baths, you don't have one. Nobody in your class does. The rich have stone tubs. The rich have slaves to haul water. You've got a clay bowl, a reed sponge, and the grim determination of a man who refuses to die, smelling like fermented fish. You pour water over your shoulders, quick, cold, insufficient, and rub your skin raw, trying to get the Nile off of you. It doesn't work. Nothing works. You smell like river mud and regret. Hair is another battlefield. If you're lucky, it's been shaved down. Not for fashion, for lice. Lice are everywhere. In the market, in your bedding, in your eyebrows. If you're poor, you might have a wig made from goat hair. If you're really poor, you pretend your sunburned scalp is a wig. Either way, you oil it up daily with whatever you can find: animal fat, crushed herbs, or something a neighbor swore was blessed by Horus and turned out to be rancid date paste. Still better than nothing. Barely. Then there's the smell. It follows you. Not just your own, but the collective bouquet of humanity jammed into dusty streets with livestock, fish guts, and the occasional funeral procession. You try perfume. Everyone does. Little cones of scented wax melted on your head during feasts, or dabs of oil under the armpits before temple. But most days you just marinate, you blend in, you become the smell, and you haven't even gotten to the worst part, because eventually, inevitably, nature calls, and when it does, you're going to miss modern plumbing like it was a long lost lover. Eventually, the moment comes, that undeniable rumble, that slow creeping sense of intestinal betrayal, and suddenly, all the perfume, all the oil, all the prayers to keep the day blessed, they mean nothing because you need to go now. And in ancient Egypt, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and absolutely no such thing as privacy. You know the drill. You tie your tunic higher, hope no one's watching, and head toward the communal latrine, or what passes for one. It's not a bathroom, it's not even an outhouse. It's a carved stone slab, or a simple pit dug into the ground, behind a reed fence, or wedged awkwardly between two homes. Sometimes, if you're lucky, there's a plank to sit on. Most times, there's just a squatting spot and some vague idea that someone cleaned it last week. They didn't. The stench hits first. It's not just bad, it's prehistoric. Like the collective sins of the neighborhood have fermented under the sun and risen as a curse. Flies swarm in clouds thick enough to block sunlight. You wave them away with one hand while the other clutches your dignity like it's the last scrap of clean linen on earth. A goat watches you from nearby. You're not sure if it's judging you or just enjoying the spectacle. Either way, the eye contact is uncomfortable. You approach the pit, you pause, you question every decision that led you here. The hole is dark, bottomless? Probably not, but it might as well be. The smell rises like heat, wrapping around your face like a scarf made of failure. There's no seat, no cover, no door, just you, nature, and the knowledge that the person before you did not aim well. You squat carefully. There's no room for error. A slip means disaster. A misstep means a story your grandchildren will tell with horror in their voices. The ground beneath you is damp. From what? You don't want to know. Your thighs burn. Your back cramps. You try to finish quickly, but your body chooses this moment to stage a rebellion. Nothing moves fast in this heat, especially not your bowels. Around you, life continues. People pass by, conversations happen, children shout and chase chickens, dangerously close to your sacred corner of shame. There's no privacy, no reverence. You might as well be doing this in the middle of a festival. And then there's the matter of cleanup. You reach for what's available, a smooth pottery shard, maybe, or a clump of reeds someone graciously left behind. If you're really unlucky, there's nothing but sand. That's right, sand, the universal exfoliant. You do your best. It's not enough. It's never enough. You'll be itchy for the rest of the day and possibly develop an infection by dinner. There's no flushing, no washing station, no designated sanitation protocol. You shuffle away from the pit like a criminal, avoiding eye contact with everyone. You don't speak. You don't explain. Everyone knows where you've been. Everyone knows what you've done. You head straight for a water jar, hoping to splash your hands before anyone notices. But of course, the jar is empty. Again, your hands now carry the memory of what just happened, and that memory will linger because soap isn't a thing. Not for you. Maybe the temple has it, maybe the palace. But for you, it's rinse and pray, rinse, and hope the gods value your soul more than your hygiene. You go back to your routine, but it follows you. The shame, the scent, the scratchy feeling in places that should never feel scratchy. You walk a little stiffer now, your dignity dripping away with each step like water through cracked pottery. And worst of all, you know this isn't over. You'll be back, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow, but you'll return to the pit. The flies, the reed fence that flaps in the wind like the wings of mocking spirits. Because in ancient Egypt, you can avoid death, taxes, and the gods' wrath for a while, but you can't avoid the latrina. You step away from the latrine, having performed what the gods might call a purification, and what you know in your heart was an act of survival. The sun's higher now, the air heavier, and the smell still clinging. You pass a group of women grinding grain, and one of them wrinkles her nose. You pretend it's not at you. You both know it is. In ancient Egypt, being clean isn't about being clean. It's about appearing ritually clean, the illusion of purity. The priests preach it, the elite pretend to live it. You, however, live in the margin between sweat and symbolism. You go through the motions, oil the scalp, wash the hands, smear the resin, burn the incense, but none of it touches the rot under your fingernails or the mildew in your bedding. Still, the society around you expects a certain performance. Before entering a temple, you must bathe, or at least claim you did. Before working in the fields, you must be cleansed, or at least avoid looking like you just rolled in compost. Appearance is everything. Truth is optional. Smell, universally negotiated. And yet, there's a hierarchy to it. The high priest in white linen, he reeks of sacred oils and smugness. The noble woman with painted eyes and braided wig, she bathes in imported water while you scrape algae out of a shared pot. Cleanliness is status, and you, a laborer, a brick carrier, a poor scribbler's assistant, you're never quite clean enough to be taken seriously. You try. You carry around a tiny sachet of ground frankincense, something your aunt swore masks bad odors. It smells like burnt tree bark and hope. You dab it behind your ears. It works for 5 minutes. Then your body reasserts itself, a mix of unwashed linen, pit sweat, and Nile fog. If status is scented oil, you are somewhere between burnt barley and dead fish daydream. The shame is subtle, but ever present. No one says anything outright. Instead, people stand a little farther from you in the market. A priest wrinkles his nose during a blessing. Your crush at the grain stand gives you a polite nod, but she angles away toward the perfumed merchant selling dried rose petals and palm wax. You can't blame her. You wouldn't stand next to you either. But here's the irony. The closer you get to being clean, the more effort it takes to stay that way. You scrub your hands until your knuckles bleed, then touch a door handle and pick up a film of goat grease. You clean your feet, then walk one street and collect half the town's dust. You rinse your face, then pass a cooking fire and get coated in fish smoke. The idea of staying clean in ancient Egypt is like trying to stay dry while swimming in the Nile. Optimistic, but stupid. You try bathing again before evening, this time using precious water you were saving for drinking. You rub yourself raw with a piece of pumice someone swore wipes away curses. It mostly just wipes away skin. You dry off in the sun, the wind kicks up, sand sticks to you like guilt, and now you're gritty and bleeding. You wonder, is this how the gods feel? Do they itch? Do they sweat under their gold masks and linen robes? Probably not. That's the cruelest part. The divine are always shown clean, polished, posed. But you, the actual machinery that keeps Egypt running, you're too busy digging canals and shoveling dung to sparkle in the sunlight. And yet, somehow, you're expected to act as if you belong to that same world. Before dinner, your uncle insists on a family cleansing ritual, a quick splash of water, a prayer to Sobek, god of the Nile, and a bit of incense waved over your mat. It's symbolic. It does nothing. The stench in the corner proves that someone used the chamber pot and did not empty it afterward. But your uncle nods solemnly, like the gods can't smell through lies. As the sun sets, you sit on your mat, newly oiled, half washed, thoroughly exhausted, and try to convince yourself you've won today's hygiene battle. But you haven't. Not really. Tomorrow, you'll sweat again. You'll scratch. You'll smell. The latrine will still be there, festering like an insult behind the alley wall. And the judgmental goat still watching. Because here's the truth. In ancient Egypt, no one is clean. Not really. You're just dirt rearranged, sand in motion, a living thing pretending to be polished. But at least you're not alone. Everyone's filthy. Everyone itches. Everyone smells like incense and despair. And somehow, that's comforting, comforting. You're starving. Not the poetic kind of hunger. Not, I could eat a whole duck. Hunger. No, this is the real thing. Your stomach growls like a jackal and folds inward, protesting the sins of yesterday's missed dinner and today's looming labor. It's breakfast time, or what passes for it, in a world where meal planning involves finding something that won't poison you and praying nobody else gets to it first. You shuffle toward the fire pit behind your house, a shallow circle of blackened stone that smells of old smoke and desperation. There's no fire yet. The embers from last night are cold. Your cousin forgot to cover them. Again, you swear under your breath and get to work. You grab a few dried reeds, bits of dung, and anything vaguely flammable. Maybe that broken basket you've been meaning to fix for weeks. Priorities. After 10 minutes of coaxing, blowing, muttering curses, and nearly setting your tunic on fire, the flames catch. Small victory. You place your only cooking pot, a clay bowl that's been cracked and sealed with what might be resin or just hardened snot, over the flame, and toss in your breakfast. Beer soup. Yes, beer soup. It's yesterday's sour beer mixed with crumbled barley bread, thinned with murky water, and stirred into a gray sludge that smells faintly like vinegar and old dreams. If you're lucky, there's a lump of lentils in there. If you're really lucky, no bugs floated in overnight. You crouch by the fire and stir slowly. The sun is up now, and it's already hot enough that your armpits are threatening to form a new river delta. You glance over at your neighbor's fire. He's got fish, actual fish, probably stolen. You hate him a little, but also wonder if he'd trade a few bites for something valuable, like the story you overheard yesterday about the temple scribe and the market girl. Gossip's currency too, but you stay quiet. Pride is a luxury, and right now, yours is slightly more valuable than his half-rotted tilapia. You slurp the soup straight from the pot. No spoon, no ceremony. It's warm, vaguely salty, a little crunchy, in a way that bread shouldn't be. Probably sand. Everything has sand. Your teeth are already ground down from years of chewing grit-laced grain, and now this breakfast adds another layer of erosion. You swallow, grimace, and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. That's it. That's the meal. No fruit, no honey, no soft cheese, no warm rolls, gently puffed by the hands of some kindly ancient grandmother. Just beer, sludge, and hope. You rinse the pot with a splash of Nile water, because scrubbing takes time, and time is something you don't have. The overseer starts screaming at sunrise. You have to be halfway to the fields or the construction site by the time Ra's chariot clears the horizon. You stand, stomach slightly quieter, but spirit no less broken. You tighten your belt, not for fashion, but to trick your body into thinking it's fuller than it is. Then you grab your tools, a basket, a rope, and a dull bronze blade that would struggle to cut a wet reed, but it's all you've got. You're fed. Technically, you're ready. Technically. And now, it's time to work. You step into the street with a crust of barley in your teeth and sand already in your shoes. It's barely morning, and the heat is already chewing through your tunic. You'd think the gods might show mercy and delay the furnace a few hours. They won't. The gods are very into punctuality, also suffering. You join the stream of bodies flowing in one direction toward the fields, the quarries, the construction sites. Wherever labor is needed, that's where you go. You don't ask questions. You don't volunteer opinions. You walk. You carry your basket. You carry your tools. You carry the dull ache in your spine that's been building since you were 12 and bent over your first load of bricks. There's no clock, but you don't need one. The rhythm of labor is beat into you like the thud of a mallet against limestone. The overseer's voice is already echoing down the road. sharp, nasal, and always angry. He doesn't remember your name. You're just you, or more often, hey, or move, or a creative string of insults involving hippos and your mother's poor taste in sandals. You reach your station. Today, it's irrigation ditches. Tomorrow, it might be hauling stone. The day after, who knows? That's the beauty of being expendable. You're endlessly versatile. The ditch is half full of water, thick with silt, and swarming with bugs. You grab your wooden shovel and start digging, heaving muddy clumps to the side, forming crude banks that will collapse by noon and need to be rebuilt. Again, your shoulders burn, your hands blister, the sweat rolls down your neck in salty streams. And the bugs, they love it. You're a buffet, sweaty, delicious buffet. Flies land on your face, gnats buzz around your ears. You can't swat fast enough. You've developed the 1,000-yard stare of a man who no longer reacts when a beetle crawls across his eyelid. Next to you, another worker coughs, a deep, wheezing cough that sounds like it's been fermenting in his chest for a week. You don't say anything. What's there to say? If he drops dead, the overseer will step over his body and tell someone else to grab his shovel. That's life. That's the job. Occasionally, someone tries to lighten the mood. A joke, a dirty song, an impersonation of the overseer that gets dangerously close to accurate. You laugh. You have to. If you don't laugh, you cry. And no one wants to cry in a ditch full of biting flies and ancient bacteria. By mid-morning, you've lost track of time. Your stomach grumbles again. Your back is soaked. Your feet squish inside your sandals. You dream briefly of quitting, running off to become a scribe or a temple cleaner, or just lying down under a tree and letting a snake finish the job. But you don't. You keep digging because you have to. And then the real tragedy strikes. Your tool breaks. It snaps at the handle with a dull crack, the kind of sound that makes everyone nearby freeze, like someone just dropped a jar of sacred ointment. The overseer is already marching over, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a line that says, "Someone's getting blamed for this." He demands to know what happened. You hold up the handle like it's Exhibit A in your murder trial. He scowls, says, "You were too rough, too clumsy, too lazy." You want to argue. You want to explain that the tool was already cracked and dried out from 3 summers ago. But you say nothing, because arguing leads to lashes, and your back is already full of regrets. He grunts, throws you a new handle. You jam it into the broken blade. It wobbles. It'll last an hour, maybe less. You return to the ditch. You start digging again, because in ancient Egypt, the sun doesn't care. The overseer doesn't care. The gods? Busy with festivals and rituals far above your pay grade. You work until the sun is at its peak, until the air is thick enough to chew, until your vision blurs and your arms go numb. And this is only half the day. The sun hangs in the sky like it's trying to punish you personally. There's no shade, not unless you count crouching under your own shadow and pretending it helps. Your skin is burning. Your tunic clings like wet papyrus, and the back of your neck feels like it's being branded by Ra himself. Welcome to midday. In Egypt, a time when only the gods and the dead are at peace. You pause to wipe your forehead, and immediately the overseer barks. He's always watching, always shouting. You think he might feed off misery. Maybe he used to be like you, just a man with a shovel. Then one day, he screamed loud enough to get noticed, and now he carries a stick and thinks he's king of the mud. You don't argue. You dig, you haul, you sweat, and every movement feels like dragging your soul through syrup. Your muscles tremble, your shoulders seize. You've been on your feet for hours with no real break, just the occasional gulp of warm water from a shared jar that tastes like clay and regret. You want to sit just for a second, but you know what happens if you do. You've seen it before. A man buckles, not because he's lazy, but because he's human. His legs give out, his breath stutters, and he drops like a sack of barley. Sometimes the overseer lets him lie there. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes there's shouting. Sometimes there's the dull thunk of a stick across ribs. And sometimes the man doesn't get back up. Heat stroke, exhaustion, who knows? Either way, there's always another body to take his place. You press on. By now the job has shifted. The ditch is dug, so now you're carting debris, or laying stone, or dragging sacks of sand to reinforce a riverbank no one really believes will hold. Each task is worse than the last, heavier, hotter, less meaningful. You work not to finish, but to avoid being the slowest. A scribe walks past, pale linen, ink-stained fingers, soft hands. He doesn't break a sweat. He scribbles notes on a wooden board and barely looks at you. He's not here to help. He's here to count how many loads you've moved, how many bricks you've stacked, how many minutes you paused. He controls the record. The record controls the rations. You smile at him, half out of fear, half out of strategy. He doesn't smile back. Time stretches. You can't tell how long you've been working anymore. Hours? Centuries? The sun doesn't move fast enough. Your feet swell. Your fingers are raw. There's a cut on your palm from where a splinter dug in hours ago. It might get infected. It probably will. Ancient Egyptian medicine is a fun grab bag of honey, prayers, and ground animal parts, none of which are near you right now. Near you right now. Eventually, someone calls a break, not because they care, because even the most heartless overseer knows you can't push a man forever without losing one. You collapse next to a pile of reeds, chest heaving, lungs sucking air that feels like steam. You drink more water. It burns going down. Someone next to you groans. Another man vomits. The scribe writes it all down. You pull off your sandal. Bad idea. Your foot is blistered, raw. You stare at it like it belongs to someone else. This isn't your foot. This is some tortured slab of meat, unfit for walking, much less hauling 30 pounds of limestone across the riverbank. But break time ends. It always ends. You rise again. Somehow, you don't even remember telling your legs to move. You just do. You join the line. You carry the load. You sweat into your eyes until the world blurs. And then, at long last, the overseer grunts, "Enough." The workday ends, not with a bell, not with applause, not with a meal, just a word, a grunt, a flick of the stick that says, "You may stop now for today." You drop the basket. Your arms twitch. You can't lift them again. You could cry, but your body has no water left. The sun is lower now, orange and mean. You start the walk back, quiet, limping, covered in dust that used to be parts of temples or crops or people, who knows. As you pass the temple, you see the priests in clean linen, anointing statues, burning incense, praying for the strength of Egypt. You think of your own offering, your back, your blood, your breath burned into the land, and you wonder, is that enough for the gods? Probably not, but it'll have to do, because tomorrow, you do it all again. You think the inside of your house is chaotic, cracked walls, screaming children, suspicious insects. That's adorable. Step outside, and welcome to the real circus, the Egyptian street. It starts with the smell, not a smell, the smell, a dense, layered fog of scents that hits you like a priest's curse to the face. There's donkey dung, fish guts, sweat-soaked linen, incense smoke, and a background note of something recently dead, but not quite buried. You breathe through your mouth. Bad choice. Now it tastes like the Nile coughed in your throat. The street is narrow, dusty, more of an alley than a street, really. The walls of mud brick houses loom on either side like they're competing for which will collapse first. The ground is uneven, a chaotic blend of dirt, loose stone, dried puddles of who knows what, and the occasional mysterious squelch. You walk carefully, one wrong step, and you're either slipping on dung or turning your ankle in a pothole carved by centuries of sandals. Noise assaults you. Someone's shouting about onions. Someone else is singing what might be a prayer or a threat. A group of children run past you, nearly knocking over a basket of dried lentils. One of them screams with joy. Another screams because he just stepped on a thorn. Somewhere nearby, a goat shrieks like it's being sacrificed. It's not. It's just a goat being a goat. Vendors line the walls, some sitting on crates, others squatting behind blankets filled with offerings, dried herbs, crusty bread, dead birds, live birds pretending to be dead. One woman holds up a bowl of beer and tries to convince passersby it's fresh. You know it's not. You saw her water it down with Nile backwash earlier. Still, people buy it because thirst doesn't ask questions. You pass a potter selling cracked jars, imported from Memphis, he claims, slapping the side of a jug like it's a prized ox. The jug cracks more. He blames you with his eyes. You keep walking. A scribe in pristine linen breezes past, nose tilted upward as if the filth of the world can't reach him. He steps around a puddle without looking. You try to follow his path and step directly into it. It's warm. You pray it was just water. You stop to let a procession of animals pass. 2 donkeys, 3 geese, 1 ox that looks like it's seen things no creature should see. A man is beating a rug against a wall nearby. Dust explodes into the air, settling on your sweat-soaked skin like seasoning. You cough. He shrugs. You consider throwing a pebble at him. You don't. The last time someone did that, the pebble hit a priest's nephew. That man is now working on a tomb wall in the middle of the desert. You hear someone yelling, loud, frantic, panicked. A woman's chasing a chicken that clearly doesn't want to be lunch. People cheer. The chicken wins, at least for now. You try to stay focused. You have an errand. Get more grain. But every 10 steps, someone tries to sell you something or yell at you for stepping too close to their doorway. A toothless man offers you a suspiciously shiny amulet. Protects against crocodiles, he says. You're 3 days from the river. Still, for a moment, you're tempted. Above you, linen strips hang from ropes connecting the buildings. Drying laundry, maybe, or just half-hearted attempts to block the sun. It doesn't work. The sun still finds you, always, relentless. You squint. Your eyes sting from the dust. Your skin burns. You finally reach the grain stand. It's crowded. The seller is yelling numbers. You don't know if it's prices, weights, or insults. You try to buy a scoop. He looks at your coin, bites it, squints, shrugs, hands you a handful of barley and a piece of attitude. You thank him. He doesn't respond. You turn to leave. Barley, clutched to your chest like treasure, and a man bumps into you hard. No apology. Just keeps walking. You check your pouch. Still there. But now your barley has a footprint on it. You make your way back through the crowd, dodging elbows, baskets, hooves, smoke, and curses. You've been outside for 15 minutes, and you're already ready for a nap and a bath you'll never have. And this is just a quiet morning in the street. You step into the market square, or rather, the ever-shifting, shouting, stomping maelstrom that pretends to be a market. There's no layout, no system, just noise, elbows, and heat. The air smells like spices and manure, like rotten dates and smoked fish, like armpits and ambition. You breathe it in and feel your ancestors weep. The vendors are in full chaos mode. One is waving dried garlic and yelling that it heals curses. Another is balancing clay pots on his head while aggressively promoting discount onions. A third stands perfectly still with 2 live geese tucked under his arms. He says nothing. He just stares at you. The geese stare too. You leave that man alone. A fight breaks out over a basket of figs. Shouting, shoving, then laughter. It's hard to tell if it's real or just part of the performance. In the market, everything is theater. You play your role. Cautious buyer, pretending not to be broke, pretending not to panic every time someone brushes against your pouch. Because yes, thieves are everywhere. Not the dagger in the night kind, the smile in your face, slip a hand in your robes kind. Children mostly. Dirty, fast, practiced. One bumps into you now. His smile is too big. His apology is too smooth. You grab your pouch instinctively. Still there. Still full. Though full is a generous term. A few worn coins and a piece of shell you keep for luck. He runs off. You watch him vanish into the crowd. You'll probably see him again tomorrow, selling the same fish he pretended to steal today. You try to buy a bit of lentil paste from an old woman whose face is so wrinkled it looks carved. She offers a price. You haggle. She scoffs. You go back and forth. Coin for weight, weight for respect, respect for speed. Finally, she slaps your hand, grins without teeth, and tosses a pinch extra in your basket. You thank her. She mutters something about Ra, watching your steps. You think it was a blessing or a warning. Suddenly, the crowd shifts. A small religious procession pushes through the center of the market. Priests in shimmering linen carry a tiny gilded statue of some local god, maybe Bess, the dwarf protector, or Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. Incense clouds trail behind them. People bow their heads. A few drop to their knees. Others pretend not to see. One man tries to sell lotus petals to the priests as they pass. He's ignored. He pretends it was a joke. You stand aside as the statue goes by. You don't want trouble. The priests are technically peaceful, but if you disrupt the flow of sacred traffic, you might find yourself volunteering at the temple for the rest of the month, cleaning owl droppings off stone altars. Once they pass, the market resumes as if nothing happened. A man shouts about donkey milk. Another throws a fistful of dates into the air like it's confetti. Someone else is trying to barter for a broken loom with a necklace made of beetle shells. Somewhere, someone is definitely lying. You head down a side alley to avoid the worst of the crowd, but it's no better. This is the side hustle lane, where people sell weird, cursed, or probably stolen things. You see a man offering magic stones that look suspiciously like river pebbles. Another sells scrolls of love spells written on papyrus, so thin it tears in the wind. You keep walking. You pass a booth where someone's shouting about crocodile, teeth for virility. You don't look. You don't want to know. You just keep your eyes down, your hand on your pouch, and your faith in nothing but momentum. Around the corner, a scribe is writing letters for hire. His board is clean, his ink pot full. His prices are outrageous. A man is dictating a love poem to a woman who probably doesn't know how to read. The scribe nods, writes slowly, then copies the same line 3 times to fill the space. Business as usual. You finally reach the edge of the market, exhausted, half covered in dust, and unsure if you accomplished anything. You bought almost nothing. You lost half your dignity, but you survived. That's the real victory. It's the real victory. You pause to rest in the shadow of a crumbling wall. A lizard scurries past. Someone yells in the distance. A fig hits the ground beside you, then rolls into the dirt. You look around. No one claims it. You pick it up. You brush it off. You eat it. Because in this town, you take what you can get. You don't get far before the street pulls you back in. Not with hands, but with stories. Everywhere you turn, someone's talking, arguing, confessing, or scheming. The street is the town's bloodstream, and gossip is its lifeblood. You overhear a merchant whispering to a farmer about a scribe caught with temple incense stuffed in his sandals. He's cursed now, the farmer says, broke out in boils, shaped like beetles. You don't ask for details. You just add it to the mental list titled, Reasons Not to Steal from the Gods. Around the corner, 2 women lean out of their windows, yelling across the alley, something about whose child is actually whose, and whether the baker's wife is pregnant again, and if the gods would bless or smite someone for sleeping with their cousin if it was only once and during flood season. You don't get involved. You just nod like you're agreeing with both sides. It's safer that way. Then, there's the ever-present threat of accidental death. You nearly get flattened by a cart barreling through the lane, pulled by a donkey whose eyes are spinning in two different directions. The driver yells, "Out of the way!" Even though he's the one steering like a lunatic. You dive into a doorway, nearly tripping over a sleeping dog that definitely wasn't there 5 seconds ago. The dog growls. You apologize. He blinks once, then goes back to dreaming. You stand, dust yourself off, keep walking. A commotion builds ahead, a crowd gathering fast, which can only mean two things in Egypt: a fight or a miracle. You inch closer. It's a snake charmer this time, or at least, that's what he calls himself. He's holding a thin, twitchy cobra and chanting loudly in broken ritual phrases while a child beats a drum with the enthusiasm of someone who's never seen rhythm. People gather, coins get tossed. Someone swears they saw the cobra blink in time with the chant. Someone else says it's just a trained snake, and the charmer used to be a butcher. Then someone else says he still is a butcher. The line between fact and folklore is thinner than papyrus here. You back away before the snake decides it hates your sandals. On your way past a shrine to Bes, the dwarf god of protection and household joy, you pause. The statue is grinning, wide-mouthed and squat, covered in offerings, dried flowers, broken jewelry, tiny clay figurines. A young woman whispers a prayer. Behind her, two boys are daring each other to poke the statue's belly and see if they get cursed. One does. Nothing happens. He laughs, then slips on pigeon droppings and nearly breaks his nose. You decide not to test Bess's sense of humor. You move on. By now, the street is getting louder again, the sun lower, the shadows longer, the city awake in a different way. People are returning from the fields, sunburned and limping, craftsmen close up their shops. Someone starts playing a flute, badly. A fight breaks out over the last basket of pomegranates. A priest shouts a warning about a solar eclipse next week. No one listens. Then comes the divine distraction of the day. A self-declared prophet climbs onto a crate and starts yelling that the river will dry up unless everyone sacrifices their best goat. Several people stop to listen. One throws a rock. The prophet ducks and keeps yelling. Eventually, a man from the temple calmly escorts him off the crate while promising a very quiet place to pray. You pause at a wall where public notices are posted, clay tablets, scratched instructions, and bits of papyrus nailed like warnings. Most of it is unreadable. Some of it is propaganda. One notice says, "All citizens must report stolen goods or face wrath from both the pharaoh and the gods." Underneath, someone scratched, "What if the gods are the ones who took it?" You chuckle, quietly. Can't laugh too loud. Not here. On your final stretch home, a vendor tries to sell you a rare pebble blessed by a moon priest. It's clearly just a white rock. You nod, smile, decline. He offers a discount. You decline again. He curses your family line. You keep walking. The street narrows. Fewer people, less shouting, just the hiss of wind stirring dust across stones and the clink of pottery somewhere nearby. You pass by the same neighbors, the same half-dead cat still squinting in the sun, the same cracked wall threatening to fall if the next goat so much as sneezes near it. You reach your door, step inside. The noise fades behind you, but only a little, because in this town, the street never really ends. It just sleeps lightly. And tomorrow, when the sun returns, the chaos will rise again, louder, dustier, smellier than ever. And you'll be right back in it. The gods are always watching. You don't see them, you never hear them, but you feel them in the heat on your neck, in the river's moods, in every fever that creeps into your bones at night. They are everywhere, and they are hungry for your attention. And that's a problem, because you barely have enough to give your own mother, much less an immortal, falcon-headed sky being who might smite your crops because you forgot to light incense before breakfast. It starts when you're a child. Before you even know how to count, you know how to bow. Before you learn your letters, You've already memorized which gods hate liars, which punish laziness, and which might drown your whole family for stepping on a sacred beetle. You don't understand why yet, just that it's safer to nod when a priest says something, safer to mumble a blessing when you pass a shrine, safer to pretend you believe even when you don't, because belief isn't optional, it's insurance. Your home has a tiny altar, a lump of stone, or maybe a chipped figurine of Bess, the dwarf god with the lion's mane and the bug-eyed grin. You don't know whether he's protecting you or mocking you, but you still leave him offerings, a drop of beer, a piece of dried fig, a chant muttered through cracked lips before bed. Everyday objects are soaked in ritual. Your water jar, blessed by a temple worker. Your sandals, stepped around a graveyard just in case. You even whisper to the bread before baking it, just to keep Taweret, the hippo goddess of mothers and madness, in a good mood. You don't need more madness. You've seen your cousin talk to onions after skipping one festival too many. You don't want to end up like him. At dawn, the priests raise their voices in the temple. You hear the chants from your street, slow, deep, like the earth humming through their throats. You stop whatever you're doing and stand still, not out of respect, out of fear. The gods can hear you eating, they can hear you scratching yourself, and they really don't like it when you burp during a morning ritual. You visit the local shrine once a week, maybe, when you have time, when your sandals hold together and your back doesn't ache too much. The priest doesn't look impressed. He has clean robes. You don't. He smells like myrrh. You smell like regret. But you bring an offering, a dried flower, a little barley, a promise to behave. The priest raises an eyebrow. You swear you'll come more often. He doesn't believe you. Neither does the god. You don't mind the rituals. Not really. What you mind is the pressure, the constant anxiety that you're doing it wrong, that you forgot the right word, that you bowed 1 second too late, that the god of flood timing now thinks you're ungrateful and plans to drown your field in pig corpses. It's not fair. But then again, nothing in Egypt is fair. Every year, there's a festival, color, music, torches, animal masks, dancing, and also the underlying, terrifying hope that the gods notice and decide not to wipe out your village this year. You cheer, you drink, you throw lotus petals into the crowd, but deep down, you know it's not joy, it's negotiation. Because here in ancient Egypt, you don't worship the gods, you manage them. The temple looks peaceful from the outside, carved stone walls, symmetrical pillars, a gentle haze of incense leaking through the open doors. Tourists from other villages gawk at it like it's a miracle. Locals know better. You've been inside once, maybe twice, and it's not peaceful. It's power, barefoot, clean shaven, linen robed power that doesn't speak your name but still owns your breath. The priests are not like you. You know that instantly. They glide, not walk. Their robes are whiter than your own thoughts. Their bodies are shaved, perfumed, and hidden behind layers of sacred cloth and titles. High priest of this, ritual warden of that, gatekeeper of the third veil of the left side of Ra's favor. You shovel sand for 10 hours and barely earn enough to eat stale bread. The priest says 3 words into a bowl of wine, and someone gives him a goat. He doesn't even like goats. The temple isn't just a spiritual center, it's a bank, a court, a library, a storehouse, and a political machine. It owns land, grain, cattle, slaves, probably more than the local governor. You know this because last year, when your uncle died, the temple showed up before his body was cold to collect the debt. You didn't even know he had a debt. Apparently, the gods keep good records. Every time you step foot in the temple, you feel like you're being watched, not just by the eyes of the painted gods on the walls, though those are bad enough, but by the priests themselves, judging, calculating, looking at your offering, and mentally converting it into copper. You bring a small jar of honey. The priest raises an eyebrow. You mumble something about it being your last one. He nods slowly, the way someone nods right before they tell you your crops will die unless you do better next week. Do better next week. You see the way they treat the high officials. Smiles, bows, blessings so thick you could build a wall out of them. But you, your background noise, you're tolerated because the temple needs people like you to fill the festival crowds, carry the sacred boats, and donate just enough to keep the gods from getting jealous. But they never forget who's in charge. You've heard the stories. The baker's apprentice who laughed during a funeral chant. Now he's working the sacred fields, which is a poetic way of saying he was conscripted into hauling stone for a monument no one will finish before they die. The merchant who tried to short the gods on his grain tithe. A week later, his house caught fire. Coincidence, people whispered. Justice, said the priest, or that old woman who claimed she saw Osiris in her dreams. The priests gave her a quiet ceremony. No one saw her again. You want to believe the gods are fair, that Ma'at, divine order, means something. But you've also seen a man starve while a priest dumped oil onto a statue's feet. You've seen kids whipped for running past a shrine too loudly. You've seen oxen slaughtered in ceremony while nearby families dig through refuse for scraps of meat. This is what religion looks like when it wears gold instead of grace. Still, you keep showing up because it's not about faith anymore. It's about fear. You fear the sun will rise too high and scorch your crops. You fear the Nile won't flood, or will flood too much, or carry disease, or carry crocodiles. You fear disease, famine, plague, curse, the evil eye, divine wrath, ancestral shame, and that shadow in the corner of your room that might be Amit coming to weigh your soul. And for all that fear, the only buffer you have is the temple. So you give, you bow, you chant words you barely understand to gods who barely pretend to listen, because if you don't get punished immediately. You get punished eventually. And in ancient Egypt, eventually is guaranteed. It's not life that haunts you, it's what comes after. You've heard the priests say it 1,000 times. Live in Ma'at, and you'll live forever. Sounds nice, peaceful, eternal. But no one ever tells you what happens if you don't. Not clearly, not calmly. They don't need to. You already know. You've seen the scrolls. You've watched the death rituals. You've felt it in your gut since childhood. In Egypt, death isn't the end. It's just when the gods finally open your file. They've been watching this whole time, silently, patiently, collecting every moment you lied, stole, skipped offerings, laughed during rituals, or rolled your eyes when someone mentioned Osiris. All of it, every sin, every slip, every barley loaf you promised and forgot to give. It's all there, etched in your ka, your spiritual record. And when you die, the whole thing goes before the court, not a metaphorical court, an actual one. You picture it constantly, because how could you not? It's the Hall of Two Truths, a place filled with 42 gods you'll have to swear in front of, one by one. I did not steal. I did not kill. I did not curse the gods, or pee in sacred water, or sleep with my cousin's wife, or lie about grain weight, or swat a cat. All things you might have done, all things they already know you did. And at the center of it all, Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, silent, unmoving, watching as your heart, your literal, physical heart, is placed on a golden scale against the feather of Mayat. If it balances, you move on. Paradise, the field of reeds, eternal, harvest, gentle breezes, fish that cook themselves, bread that doesn't turn to sand in your mouth, a home better than any you had in life. But if your heart is heavy, if the scale tips, you're done. Not tortured, not corrected, just erased, fed to Amit, the soul-eating beast, part crocodile, part lion, part hippo, all nightmare. She doesn't snarl. She doesn't savor. She just swallows. You cease to exist. No name, No memory, not even in song. That's the fear, not death, oblivion. So you do everything you can to prepare. You whisper prayers over your bread. You donate oil to the temple, even if it means skipping dinner. You learn the 42 negative confessions by heart, just in case Anubis lets you rehearse. And still, you know it might not be enough, because only the rich can afford the proper rituals, the full mummification, the golden mask, the shabtis, tiny carved servants who will do your work in the afterlife. You might get a half-wrapped burial and a priest who mispronounces your name mid-ceremony. You've watched nobles die with orchestras and priests chanting for hours. You've seen poor men buried before sunrise, wrapped in borrowed cloth, with a blessing scrawled on a potsherd and tossed in the sand. Still, you try. You save for a Book of the Dead scroll, or more likely, a page, a single spell scratched onto scrap. You hide it under your mat. You whisper it to yourself before sleep, just in case. You don't understand all the words. You just know they're your only shot at passing the trial. And then, someday, you'll die. Not grandly, not with trumpets or gold. Maybe from a fever, maybe in your sleep, maybe crushed under a stone block you were told was light enough. Either way, it'll happen, and you'll stand before the gods, naked, afraid, and without a lawyer. You'll look into Anubis's unblinking eyes and hope your heart wasn't keeping secrets. You'll hope you bowed enough, donated enough, believed enough, and maybe, just maybe, they'll say your name and let you in. Because here in ancient Egypt, the gods forget nothing, but if they forgive, you get forever. You'd think the worst was over once the sun finally stops turning your skin into papyrus. But in ancient Egypt, nightfall doesn't bring mercy. It brings something much worse, quiet, and not the kind that soothes. This kind of quiet hums with tension, with the unsaid, with the things that daylight burns away, but darkness lets breathe. The Nile still flows, yes, but now it feels deeper, hungrier, and your village, which during the day is a mess of shouting and smells and feet pounding through the dust, suddenly becomes still. Not calm, just paused, like the whole place is holding its breath, waiting for something to come, walking out of the black. You sit in your one-room house, if you're lucky enough to have mud brick walls that haven't crumbled since the last flood, and you listen. The wind picks up, curling through the broken reed fence. A pot rattles somewhere, and you tell yourself it's just the cat, but it's not the cat. The cat hasn't come back in 3 nights. Your family lies beside you, shoulder to shoulder, knee to ribs, pressed into each other for warmth or safety or both. There's no fire, too dangerous at night, just the smallest oil flame in the corner, trembling like it's scared too. You can't stop staring at it, because if it goes out, so does your last illusion that you're protected. That's when the sounds start. A rustle above, a groan in the beams, the hiss of wind, or something pretending to be wind. Every story you've ever heard comes crawling out of your memory. The jackal-headed demons who steal breath from sleepers, the lost spirits who whisper curses into your ear while you dream, the woman who laughed at a priest and now screams every full moon from inside a fig tree. You close your eyes anyway, not because you're tired, because it's the only way to not look at the door and wonder if something's going to come through it. You do eventually fall asleep, not gently, not peacefully. You collapse into it, dragged under by exhaustion, like a body sucked into silt. But the body rests, the mind does not. The dreams start almost immediately, too vivid, too loud, the kind where you wake up gasping and can't tell if the thing in the corner of your room was in the dream or still is. You dream of crocodiles walking upright, of priests with no faces, of boats filled with your dead relatives, all pointing at you. You sweat through your linen, assuming you even had linen to sleep in. And when you're not dreaming, you're twitching because something is crawling on you. You're not sure what. Lice, fleas, a spider, One of those fat beetles that nest in the cracks of your walls and march across your chest like they're inspecting a tomb. You slap blindly in the dark. You miss. It scurries away. You try not to scream. You roll over. Immediately regret it. Your mat smells like mold and feet. The floor underneath is harder than memory. The straw shifts beneath you with the unmistakable crunch of something alive. You want to sit up, shake it out, but you also don't want to see what you might disturb. Someone next to you snores. Another moans. The baby cries, then stops too. Suddenly, you check to make sure it's still breathing. It is. You try to go back to sleep. A thump from the roof makes your heart slam against your ribs. Probably an animal. Probably, unless it's a spirit passing overhead, looking for an open soul. The priest said to cover your head at night. Keep your breath close. Spirits follow. Warmth. You pull the cloth over your face. It's hot, stifling, but the fear of waking up paralyzed by a dream demon outweighs your need for air. Eventually, morning will come, but not fast enough. At some point, the darkness fades, not all at once, just a slow, gray crawl along the wall, a barely there light that makes shadows retreat a little. The village doesn't wake all at once either. It stirs, groans, rises like a patient recovering from fever. You sit up. Everything hurts. Your neck is stiff. Your shoulders numb from someone else sleeping on it. Your eyes are crusted with sand and tears and bad dreams. You don't even check your mat. You know what's under it. You don't want to know again. Again. Outside, the sounds return. The squawk of chickens, the bray of donkeys, someone yelling about water jugs. Life resuming, loud and stupid, as if none of it happened. No one talks about the scratches on the walls. No one talks about the missing cat. No one mentions the boy down the road who started stuttering last week after sleepwalking into the fields. Because you can't talk about the night, it listens. You get up, shake the dust off your tunic, step outside like a soldier leaving the battlefield. You survived. Again, you didn't get eaten or cursed or stolen by gods in the dark. That's a win. That's a start. But you don't feel rested. You never do. The night doesn't let you rest. It just lets you borrow a little more time. And if the gods are merciful, if the amulets hold, and the priest's blessing doesn't wear off too soon, maybe you'll make it through tonight too. But here in ancient Egypt, that's never guaranteed. The workday ends when the sun gets tired of watching you suffer. Your back is wrecked, your sandals are barely holding on, and your soul? That thing's been trying to crawl out of your body since midday. But now, finally, you're done. And so begins the second most sacred ritual in ancient Egypt, right after feeding the gods, getting just enough fun to forget how miserable you are. The village begins to shift as laborers file in from the fields and workshops. You all wear the same expression, that blank-eyed, half-dead look that says, I survived. It's not victory, it's resignation, but there's a shared understanding. If you don't do something tonight to dull the edge of reality, tomorrow might break you. First stop, beer. Not the golden frothy fantasy you're imagining. Ancient Egyptian beer is warm, flat, and thick enough to chew, made from half-baked barley bread, soaked and left to ferment in clay jugs. It smells like vinegar and looks like someone strained soup through a tomb curtain, but it does the job. 3 gulps in, your shoulders start to unclench. 5 gulps in, you're someone else entirely. A dancer, a lover, a priest, with nothing to prove. The beer house is just a hut with stools, shadows, and noise. There's no privacy, no manners, just people packed together, all pretending not to hear each other's misery. You sit beside someone you don't know. You don't ask his name. You both sip from the same cracked pot and grunt in agreement when someone curses their overseer. In here, everyone's equal, filthy, poor, and buzzing on barley sludge. The talk turns lewd quickly. Jokes about gods in compromising positions, stories of failed seductions. Someone boasts about their night with a temple dancer, though everyone knows she charges more than anyone here can afford. Still, the story gets laughs. Loud ones, desperate ones. You laugh too, harder than you should, because for a moment, it feels like something real. If you're lucky, there's music, not fancy, lyres, or priest approved flutes, but rhythm. Someone beats a pot with a spoon, someone else clicks stones together. A woman hums a tune passed down from her grandmother, probably older than the pharaoh himself. The rhythm builds, feet start tapping, bodies sway. A man claps offbeat and gets booed into silence. It's chaos, it's joy, it's enough. And then there's the flirting, not the soft, poetic kind. This is sweat stained glances and dirty grins, words slurred through cracked lips, promises no one intends to keep. The woman across from you makes a crude joke and raises one eyebrow. You don't reply. You don't need to. You both know what might happen next. Maybe you'll follow her into the alley behind the brewer's house. Maybe you'll share 10 minutes that feel like victory, or escape, or forgetting. Maybe you'll catch lice. It's all part of the gamble, because that's what this is, gambling with pain. You wager your little bit of energy, your last few copper scraps, your best smile, or dirtiest joke. And if the gods are kind, you win a night of distraction. Even the gods seem to look away after sunset. In daylight, they judge. At night, they drink too. You've seen the temple boys sneak out to join the crowd. Even priests have limits. Even the holiest need to drown the taste of funerals and incense. You step outside to cool down. The night air clings to you like wet cloth. You hear laughter from down the lane, someone playing a reed flute badly, the rhythmic slap of sandals against earth. It's not peaceful, but it's alive. And in a world where so much is built on silence, fear, and obedience, that's everything. Tonight, you'll drink, you'll flirt, you'll dance or stumble or cry, or maybe all three. And tomorrow, when the sun drags itself back into the sky, you'll wake up hungover, sore, and vaguely ashamed. But you'll get up because you laughed, because you forgot. And in ancient Egypt, sometimes that's the closest thing to freedom you'll ever get. Not every night ends in beer-stained laughter and awkward alley romances. Some nights, the ones the whole town waits for, are bigger, louder, crazier, the kind where entertainment stops being a distraction and becomes a full-blown escape plan. You hear it before you see it. The drums, deep, pounding, chaotic, not temple drums, not noble rhythms. These are street beats, thumping from reed mats, old pots, stretched leather held over fire-charred bowls, the kind of percussion that wakes something ancient inside your ribs and says, forget everything, right now, and people listen. The main square turns into a frenzy. Torches line the alleys, casting everything in firelight and shadow. Kids run barefoot, already smeared in dust and date paste. The elders pretend to grumble, but you see the twitch in their lips. They're waiting for the dancing to start. They always are. Tonight, the games begin. Sonnet boards get hauled out, scratched onto wooden planks, or carved into old slabs. The pieces don't match. Shells, pebbles, knuckle bones. Doesn't matter. The rules are half remembered, half made up, and change, depending on who's winning. One man claims he learned to play from a priest. Another swears his board is cursed. You lose 3 times and swear the gods are mocking you. You keep playing anyway, because even losing feels better than reality. Then come the fights. Not war, not violence, not real bloodshed, just the kind of brawling that lets people release steam. 2 men strip to their waists and circle each other, while the crowd chants and claps in sync. It's all elbows and bravado, exaggerated moves, dramatic tumbles, laughter. When someone gets knocked into a basket of onions, a woman yells, hit him like Ra hits the earth. Everyone laughs. The men grapple. One taps out. No one dies. Everyone wins. Some nights, it gets out of hand. Someone throws a punch too hard. Someone gets insulted over a bad dice roll or a goat joke. Then the crowd splits, half trying to break it up, half egging it on. No one remembers the reason. Next morning, just bruises, hangovers, and possibly a black eye that came with a new friend. And then the dancers arrive. Not hired, not formal, just neighbors who've had enough to drink and aren't afraid of looking ridiculous. The music builds, pipes, drums, someone clapping off rhythm, bodies twist, jump, shake. One girl flips her hair like a goddess possessed. A man with a limp does something that might be a dance or a seizure. No one cares. The whole square is a heartbeat. Dust rises into the torchlight. You close your eyes and move like someone who's never dug a ditch in their life. During festivals, it gets even bigger. Holidays dedicated to Hathor or Bastet practically command debauchery. The temple might sponsor the thing, at least officially. They'll call it a ritual observance. You call it an excuse to drink until you forget your own name. Sacred boats get paraded down the river, flowers tied to the sides, flutes wailing into the wind. People throw garlands, people throw up. Both happen with equal enthusiasm. Offerings pile high, not just food and trinkets, but desires. Everyone makes a wish. Most are the same: health, rain, sex, luck, escape. You watch a priest halfway through, a trance, mumbling in tongues and writhing on the ground. People gasp. You know he fakes half of it. You respect the performance. It gives people something to believe in, or laugh at, or cry for. Either way, they need it. Someone grabs your hand. You don't know them. Doesn't matter. You're pulled into another dance, another joke, another wild story, shouted over the din about a farmer who married a crocodile priestess. You laugh until your ribs ache, and for that one night, everything else disappears. No fields, no lashes, no spirits scratching at your door, just the beat, the bodies, the madness that feels like freedom. Because if you can't change the world you live in, you might as well burn it down in laughter for one night and dance on the ashes. When you've sweated through fields all day and begged the gods not to let your roof collapse, you don't just want relief, you want escape, not rest, not reality softened, something other, something bigger, wilder, maybe even holy. That's where fantasy comes in. And in ancient Egypt, fantasy is everywhere: in sex, in myths, in stories whispered under blankets made of scratchy linen and unwashed hopes. The world outside your door is brutal, but inside your head, you're not a poor farmer with fleas. You're the lover of a goddess, a hero who drank with Set and survived, a priest who seduced a spirit and came back laughing. You hear it first in gossip: the temple girl who laid with a crocodile god, the soldier whose seed made a priestess float. None of it's true. All of it's true. You believe because you need to, because reality doesn't offer anything half as generous. Then there are the erotic tales, old, dirty, sacred in their own way, told by firelight, murmured into the ears of friends or strangers. Tales where gods lose control, where women outsmart pharaohs in bed, where men woo the river itself and wake up wet with lotus petals clinging to their thighs. Everyone pretends to be shocked. No one is. You laugh, you sweat, you wonder what your mother would say, then laugh harder. And when the stories end, you make your own. A shared glance, a joke too suggestive, a touch that lingers. Sex isn't hidden here. It isn't clean either. It's messy, desperate, fast, or slow, depending on how much barley beer's in your blood and how many curses you've dodged that week. You sneak off behind granaries, into empty storehouses, against temple walls when the moon is low and no gods are looking. You grunt, you gasp, you live. Some of it is love, most of it is not. It's escape, a body proving it's still capable of pleasure, a soul clawing toward something warm. You don't judge anyone for it. You can't. You do it too. The priests might frown. but they also write the same dirty poems, carved into stone and hidden behind scrolls. The gods might see, but half your stories involve them doing worse. You get away with it because everyone needs to. Fantasy is the one currency you can spend without losing anything real. Even the temple feeds it. Ritual theater, sacred dramas, where gods fight, die, love, resurrect. You watch actors scream prayers and rip their garments. You know it's fake, but when the woman playing Isis weeps over a lifeless Osiris, you cry too. You're not crying for them, you're crying for yourself, for everyone you've lost, for everything you wish would come back. And then there are dreams. Some say they're messages, others say they're tricks. You just know they're better than the mud brick ceiling above your bed. In your dreams, you ride golden boats, you fly, you feast, you dance with spirits. You're someone else. And when you wake up, sweating and confused, you stare into the dark and whisper the dream again, hoping the gods heard it, because deep down, you don't want gold, or power, or immortality. You just want a better story, something that makes the pain worth it, that lets you look at this life and believe, if only for a heartbeat, that it isn't all suffering and sand, and if you can't live it, you'll make it up. Because in ancient Egypt, fantasy isn't childish, it's survival. When you've sweated through fields all day and begged the gods not to let your roof collapse, you don't just want relief, you want escape, not rest, not reality softened, something other, something bigger, wilder, maybe even holy. That's where fantasy comes in. And in ancient Egypt, fantasy is everywhere, in sex, in myths, in stories whispered under blankets made of scratchy linen and unwashed hopes. The world outside your door is brutal, but inside your head, you're not a poor farmer with fleas. You're the lover of a goddess, a hero who drank with Set and survived, a priest who seduced a spirit and came back laughing. You hear it first in gossip, the temple girl who laid with a crocodile god, the soldier whose seed made a priestess float. None of it's true. All of it's true. You believe because you need to, because reality doesn't offer anything half as generous. Then come the erotic tales, old, dirty, sacred in their own way, told by firelight, murmured into the ears of friends or strangers. Tales where gods lose control, where women outsmart pharaohs in bed, where men woo the river itself and wake up wet with lotus petals clinging to their thighs. Everyone pretends to be shocked. No one is. You laugh, you sweat, you wonder what your mother would say, then laugh harder. And when the stories end, you make your own. Like the time with Nafi, the reed cutter's daughter, with one eye sharper than any blade in the delta. You'd been watching her for weeks, stealing glances as she hauled bundles past the brewer's hut. One night, after too many mugs of barley beer, you found yourself beside her in the shadows, behind the potter's wall, where the music thumped through mud brick and bones alike. She didn't smile, she smirked, said, "You gonna talk all night, or do something worth remembering?" You didn't answer. You didn't need to. It wasn't love. It wasn't poetry. It was hands fumbling over rough tunics and whispered jokes between gasps. It was your back hitting cold stone and her breath hot on your neck. She tasted like date wine and dust. You didn't care. For a moment, it felt like you weren't some half-starved laborer. You were divine, desired, worshipped. Afterward, she laughed, not kindly, not cruelly, just real, rolled off you, adjusted her scarf, and disappeared into the alley before you could even ask her name. Not that you needed it. Everyone knew Nafi. Everyone wanted Nafi. But you had her story now. You told it for weeks, changed the details every time. Sometimes she kissed your eyelids. Sometimes she scratched your back hard enough to bleed. Sometimes she whispered a prayer to Bastet after. All lies, all truths. It didn't matter. People listened. They laughed. They envied you. One man swore she was half demon. Another said she only touched men who'd dream of her afterward. You did, 3 nights in a row. Even now, you wonder if she was real, if any of it was. But that's the point, because fantasy is how you survive this place. It lives in the dirty stories, the temple plays, the half remembered myths sung between work shifts, in dreams where gods take your face and lovers wear starlight, and you wake with your heart racing like you've just stolen something sacred. The temple feeds it too. The priests know what they're doing. Rituals are theater. You weep for Osiris, not because you knew him, but because it feels good to cry for someone who might actually come back. You chant for Hathor because she dances when you can't. You throw petals into the Nile and pretend the river listens. And when you lie awake in your too small home, with sweat sticking your legs to the mat and someone snoring beside you, you don't count your coin. You replay the story of Nafi, of gods, of someone who once laughed like you mattered. Because if this world won't let you rest, fantasy will. And in ancient Egypt, that's how you stay sane. You pretend harder than the pain is real. You wake up hungry again. It's not the sharp, gnawing kind that bites at your ribs. Not yet. It's the slow, dull ache that's always there. The kind that wraps around your belly like a belt and tightens throughout the day. You're used to it by now. Everyone is. In ancient Egypt, food isn't a guarantee. It's a ritual, a negotiation, a game the Nile plays with your life every single season. If the flood was good, you've got grain. If not, well, there's always hope. Or soup, usually both. You shuffle to your food stores, a hole in the corner of your house, lined with straw and half prayers. Inside, the barley's low. You've been stretching it with crushed chickpeas and dreams. You pick up a loaf of yesterday's bread. It's harder than your sandals. You knock it against the wall. A piece chips off. You chew it anyway. Your jaw hurts. Your stomach doesn't care. Breakfast is survival. A few onions, a clove of garlic, maybe a smear of sour cheese if someone in the neighborhood was feeling generous. You dip stale bread in beer to soften it. It still tastes like brick. You eat in silence. Talking wastes energy, and breath is better saved for lifting, digging, grinding, anything that might make the gods notice you and send a little more grain next year. But you remember a time, a rare, bright, cursed memory, when you actually felt full. It was 2 years ago, just after the harvest festival. The gods were generous, the grain was tall, and your uncle had just returned from work on a temple site. He brought gifts, a honey cake wrapped in linen, a fish freshly salted, a pitcher of palm wine. You can still remember the taste, the texture, how the honey stuck to your teeth, how the fish fell apart on your tongue like it had been blessed. You ate until your belly stretched, until your fingers were sticky, until your cousin told you to slow down, or the gods might think you were mocking them. You laughed then, a full laugh, a dangerous laugh. You laughed like you didn't know what hunger was. You never laughed like that again. Now, dinner is boiled lentils, or boiled grass, or sometimes just boiled water with enough herbs to trick your nose into thinking it's soup. If you're lucky, someone caught a frog, or a bird, or found a fish bloated in a ditch and convinced themselves it wasn't cursed. You eat what you're given. You thank the gods, even if your stomach groans, even if your bowels complain, even if your body rebels. You pretend it's enough. You pretend because the alternative is despair. And in this land of gold and gods, despair is more dangerous than starvation. The Nile is a god. You worship it, fear it, curse it, and pray to it, often all in the same breath, because here in Egypt, your entire life hangs on whether or not the river decides to behave this year. Too low, crops wither, wells dry up, the animals collapse, people follow. Too high, houses drown, grain rots, roads vanish, children go missing. In the mud, just right, you get to eat, maybe even thrive. But the Nile doesn't do just right. Often, when flood season comes, you stand at the edge of the fields, staring at the rising water like it's a drunk father walking in the door. dangerous, unpredictable, and holding your future in his arms. You watch the black silt creep into the irrigation ditches. You hope it reaches far enough, but not too far. You've seen entire storage pits vanish beneath the flood. You've seen snakes rise from soaked burrows, hissing like they know whose fault this all is. And still, you kneel. You thank the river, because what choice do you have? Choice do you have? There's no planting without it, no harvest, no bread, no beer, just brittle earth and dry air and a slow death in the dust. So, you offer dates and figs and old songs, hoping the Nile hears, hoping it forgives last year's sins. Your father used to say, the Nile is a mother when she's kind and a god when she's not. You learned that the day your neighbor's house slid into a canal, nothing was left but straw, silence, and a chicken who swam better than anyone expected. When the water retreats, if it does, that's when the real work begins. You dig, you plant, you sweat. The land stinks of mud and promise. The sun bakes your neck until it blisters. You work anyway, because if you don't put seed in the ground, you might as well dig your own grave. Sometimes, the Nile turns cruel. Slowly, the flood comes, but the water's foul. Too much salt, too many corpses, animal or otherwise. The grain grows wrong, tastes wrong, feeds no one. The priests call it a curse. You call it what it is. Another year of eating less. Still, you gather. Whatever grows, you take. You dry it, store it, guard it like it's gold. And every night, you pray for one more season, one more good flood, one more year without famine. Because here, you don't live off the land, you survive off the river's mood. And the Nile doesn't care if you're hungry. Most days, you eat to not die. But once in a while, if the gods are bored or the priests are generous, you get to eat like you're alive. It starts with a sound, drums, horns, shouts echoing down the lane. You poke your head out the door, still chewing a crust of yesterday's bread. Someone's yelling about a feast, a real one, not a neighborhood pot of watery lentils, an actual, God-blessed, guilt-free, stomach-stretching feast. Maybe it's a temple holiday. Maybe someone rich died. Maybe the scribes decided the gods were hungry and made enough food to share by accident. You don't ask, you just run. At the center of the square, it's chaos. Fire pits blaze. Skewers drip fat onto the stones. Jugs of beer wobble dangerously in every hand. You push your way through the crowd, elbowing past a kid and nearly tripping over an old woman who cackles as you go by. The tables, or whatever counts as tables here, are heaped with stuff you forgot even existed. Figs stuffed with honey, roasted goose, real wheat bread, dates so sweet they sting. A priest mutters a blessing over it all, but no one listens. The gods aren't eating this time. You are. You grab whatever you can reach. You don't even look. You don't care. Bread, fruit, meat, cheese. Your mouth is full before you sit. You eat with both hands. No shame, no rules. A child beside you vomits from overeating. A man next to you sneezes breadcrumbs into the beer jug. You laugh. You drink anyway, because tonight, just tonight, you're not poor. You're not starving. You're not someone who spends all year praying for a barley harvest that won't poison your children. You're a king, a priest, a guest at the gods' table. And the strange part, it feels normal, not decadent, not wild, just right. Like this is how it's supposed to be. Like your body remembers what it means to feel full and happy at the same time. Then come the stories. Full bellies loosen tongues. A woman recites a hymn to Hathor. A farmer tells the tale of the cow that gave birth to twins on festival day and turned to stone. Someone jokes that if the priests served food like this every week, no one would bother praying anymore. The crowd roars. You almost choke on your laughter. At some point, the music starts. Flutes, drums, someone whistling through chipped teeth. People dance. Even the stiff old man who never speaks smiles and lifts his cup. You don't think, you don't worry, you just eat, sing, laugh, and live. But even feast days end, and when they do, the hangover is more than just physical. You wake the next morning, back in your scratchy mat, stomach sore from stretching, mouth dry, dreams still tasting of honey and lamb. The memory stings because it was too good, too full, too kind. But that's the deal. The gods give you just enough joy to keep crawling through the dirt the rest of the year. And you take it because even one day of sacred indulgence, one day of funeral bread and salted goose and wine dribbling down your chin is enough to remind you that you are still human. And in ancient Egypt, that's all the nourishment you get before the hunger returns. You wake up wrong, your skin burns, your head swims, your gut rolls like the Nile in a storm. You've felt pain before, splinters, sunstroke, broken toes from dropped bricks. But this is something deeper, slower, like your body's rotting from the inside out. And the gods are just watching. So you do what every Egyptian does when something inside them starts whispering death. You go to the healer. He's not what you'd hope for, not a wise old man with herbs in baskets and kindness in his eyes. He's thin, unwashed. His house stinks of mildew and fish bones. But people say he cured a man who couldn't pee for a week. So you step inside. The healer looks at you, squints, sniffs, and immediately starts chanting. You don't know what the words mean. You don't ask. It's not about understanding. It's about appeasing whatever angry spirit or cursed wind crawled into your gut while you slept. He spits into a bowl, grinds black seeds between his teeth, and tells you your soul's been knocked loose. He reaches for honey, lizard scales, and some kind of grease, maybe from a bird, maybe from your worst nightmare. He mixes it all with old beer and smears it on your forehead. The smell hits first, then the sting, then nothing. You'll feel worse before you feel better, he says, which is ancient Egyptian for this might kill you, but maybe not. You leave with a scroll tied to your wrist, a spell scrawled on faded linen. You're supposed to read it aloud every hour while facing west or east. He wasn't clear. Either way, you're not going to remember. You're too busy holding your stomach like it's about to drop out of your body. Back home, someone recommends a priest instead, or an exorcist, or a midwife who knows which plants won't kill you. You try all three. The priest gives you holy water and tells you to stop swearing. The midwife rubs your back and hums songs from a language no one speaks anymore. The exorcist burns herbs and screams at your belly. You still feel like you're dying, but then something strange happens. You don't. Maybe it's the spell. Maybe it's the honey. Maybe it's just time passing, like it always does. But one morning, you wake up and the fever's gone. Your mouth still tastes like frog spit, but your bones don't ache. Your eyes can focus again. You're alive. You go back to the healer, not to thank him, just to see if he's still there. He is, treating a boy with boils by waving a stick and spitting into the air. You nod at each other. That's enough, because in Egypt, medicine isn't science. It's survival, a blend of hope, fear, herbs, magic, and spit. And when your body finally gives in for good, well, that's someone else's ritual. It's one thing to get sick in ancient Egypt. It's another thing entirely when something breaks, bursts, or refuses to stop bleeding. That's when the real terror begins. That's when the healers stop muttering spells and start sharpening blades. You've cut yourself before. Splinters, cracked skin, maybe even a snake bite if the gods were feeling theatrical. But now it's something bigger. A boil the size of a pomegranate festering on your thigh. A toothache so deep you want to bash your own jaw with a brick. An arrow wound. A bone sticking out of somewhere it shouldn't be. So you're laid out on a woven mat, stomach twisted with dread, watching a man in a linen skirt rub a bronze knife with ash and mutter to himself. You want to run, but you also want to live. So you stay. The healer doesn't look at you. He looks at the wound like it's the real patient, and then he cuts. There's no anesthetic, just grit your teeth pain and a helper holding your legs. If you scream too loud, someone will clap a hand over your mouth. You thrash. Your vision whites out. You smell your own blood before you see it. The wound oozes. The healer scoops it with a reed spoon. He mutters a curse at the pus like it's listening. Then he pours wine, or maybe just vinegar, straight into the hole. You shriek. Your body jolts. The wound sizzles. He says that means it's working. Then comes the stuffing. Old linen, soaked in honey and salt. He jams it into the wound like he's packing grain for winter. You bite your tongue. It bleeds too. Later, hours, days. You don't remember. You wake up shivering, fevered. Your leg screams with every heartbeat. The mat under you stinks. You're not sure if it's infection or healing. You don't ask. You breathe. That's enough. Someone feeds you soup. Another person lights incense and waves it near your bandages. A neighbor tells you they dreamed of a falcon, a good omen. You cling to that harder than you cling to your sanity. In time, the wound hardens, crusts over, scars. You live, you limp, but you live. And for the rest of your life, you rub that scar like it owes you answers. You tell people about the time you survived a knife without dying. You exaggerate the size of the cut, the depth of the infection, the number of gods involved. You call yourself blessed, lucky, cursed, sacred, because in ancient Egypt, every scar is a story, and the ones carved by a healer's blade, those are the ones worth telling. Sometimes, your body breaks in ways that no knife or herb can fix. Your fever leaves, but your dreams don't. Your wound closes, but your hands still shake. You walk, talk, eat, breathe, but something inside you isn't right anymore. Not fully. That's when you stop going to the healer. You go to the other kind of doctor, the kind who doesn't carry blades. He carries power, or so he says. He's got eyes that don't blink enough and a voice that hums, even when he isn't talking. His hut is smaller than yours, but the walls are smeared with ashes and lined with clay jars that rattle when there's no wind. He tells you to sit. You don't argue. He studies your face, pokes at your chest, listens to the air around your body like it might confess something you won't. He nods. It's not your flesh, he says. It's your soul. You already knew that. He gathers things, date pits, a feather, a chipped statue of Hathor, some kind of bird foot. Then he spits, long, slow, careful, into a bowl of milk. You flinch. He tells you this is ancient magic, old as the stars, older than pyramids, sacred, saliva. You drink it. It tastes like regret. Then come the words, not prayers, not exactly, chants, shouts, hisses. He slaps your chest, blows into your mouth, ties a knotted string around your wrist so tight your fingers go numb. You sit there, tears running down your face, not from pain, from fear, from something leaving or maybe entering. When it's over, he hands you an amulet, clay, ugly, sharp edges. Don't take it off, he says, not even in the bath, not even in your sleep, especially not in your sleep. You nod, you wear it, you feel ridiculous, but the shaking stops. Not all at once, not completely, but it lessens. The dream's quiet, the sweat dries faster, your breath returns. You don't tell anyone, you don't have to. They see the amulet, they understand. You paid in chickens, onions, maybe a coin, but you got something back, a barrier between you and whatever darkness had curled up inside your ribs. You start visiting the man weekly, not because you're sick, but because you're afraid of being sick again. He gives you crushed scarab shells, papyrus soaked in lotus water, chants written in a dead dialect. You pretend you understand. You burn them. You bury them. You whisper them into the Nile when no one's watching. Because out here, you don't just fight disease. You fight the unseen, the curses, the jealous dead, the gods with moods, the bad luck that clings to skin like a rash you can't scrub off. And when logic fails, when salves rot, and knives slip. The only thing left is belief. So you believe in spells, in charms, in sacred breath, and divine saliva. And when someone else gets sick, really sick, you don't recommend a healer. You take them to him because he healed you. Or maybe he made you believe you healed. And in ancient Egypt, that's the same thing. From the moment you cried your first breath into the hot Nile air, the countdown began. You were never just living in Egypt, you were dying in it, slowly, deliberately, under the unblinking eye of gods who cared more about your afterlife than your current one. And everyone knows it. No matter how poor you are, how often your roof leaks, or your beer tastes like mud, you are expected to prepare for death like it's a second wedding. And weddings here don't come cheap. Your neighbor's mother died last week. You saw her body, still warm, get wrapped in linens, stiff with poverty. No oils, no priest, no ceremony, just a few tears and a quick prayer shouted between arguments over which cousin gets the leftover bread. She was gone before sundown, buried in a patch of earth barely big enough for the box they jammed her in. And no one said it out loud, but they all thought the same thing. She's not going to the good place. Because if you want an afterlife, a real one, with sweet air and green fields, and your heart lighter than a feather, you need stuff, rituals, tools, scrolls, money. You need a coffin, not just a wooden one, a painted one, covered in protection spells and fancy names. You need a priest to say the right words. You need canopic jars for your guts. You need someone to cry loudly. And if you don't have family, you hire a professional mourner to wail like they loved you. It's all part of the package. You think that's extreme? There are people in your village who've skipped meals to save for Shopti dolls, little figurines that are supposed to do their chores for them in the afterlife. Because yes, apparently, even death involves work. And if you're poor, you cut corners. You wrap your dead in old clothes. You copy spells by ear, hoping you remembered them right. You bury your loved ones with breadcrumbs and broken amulets. You whisper to Anubis that you meant well, and you pray that's enough, because dying badly doesn't just mean suffering in life. It means eternal hunger, wandering the underworld, confused and naked, begging for scraps of light while the rich float past you on golden barges, feasting with the gods. That's the fear no one says out loud, that you'll die wrong, that your soul will be too heavy, your burial too cheap, your body forgotten under sand and shame. So you hoard, you carve your name into rocks, you teach your children the right prayers, you memorize the book of the dead like your life depends on it, because it does. Because in Egypt, death isn't the end, it's the invoice, and you better be ready to pay. By the time you're on the slab, you don't get a say. You can't speak. You can't flinch. You can't argue that your cousin forgot your favorite amulet or that this priest smells like onions and wine. You're dead, and now your body is a project. The embalmers have done this 100 times. You? Just the once. You lay there naked, under linen and flies, while they argue over which organ to start with. First comes the brain. They don't keep it. They don't honor it. They scrape it out with a hook through your nose, swirling it around like they're stirring porridge. You'd think something that held all your memories and dreams and regrets might deserve better. Nope, it gets tossed in the trash heap out back. Not sacred enough. Then the embalmers turn to the chest. Bronze blades slice you open. Your ribs are peeled apart. Heart, lungs, stomach, intestines all come out. Not gently, not reverently, just out. The heart might be saved if the family could afford the extra prayer. If not, into the jar it goes. Each organ gets its own canopic jar, protected by one of the four sons of Horus. There's a jackal, a baboon, a hawk, a human face. You don't get to choose. You just hope they remember whose jar goes where. You hope the jars aren't reused. You've heard stories. Next, they pack you, inside and out. Natron, dry, salty, sacred powder, fills your body cavity, and covers every inch of your skin. It sucks out your moisture. Your soul, too, maybe. For 40 days, you just dry. Your skin shrinks. Your eyes cave in. You become more statue than human. After the wait, they unwrap you, dust you off, look you over. If nothing's leaking, they start to wrap you, linen upon linen, soaked in oils, stuck with charms, tied with knots that make no sense to anyone but the gods. A scarab beetle amulet gets jammed over your chest. A spell gets tucked between your toes. A small scroll is shoved into your mouth so your voice will work in the afterlife. You look ridiculous. You look holy. You look dead. But the work's not done. Not for them, because now they've got to sell the show. The priest arrives, late and sunburned. He pretends to chant while watching for coin. The opening of the mouth ritual happens, a ceremony that involves poking your lips with tools and muttering so you can breathe in the afterlife. You wonder if the gods actually care. You hope they do. Then comes the parade, your final trip. You're carted through the streets like a prized loaf of bread, trailed by relatives, pretending they didn't owe you money. Hired mourners scream louder than anyone. Children watch, wide-eyed. Dogs bark. Someone makes a joke about how long your feet were. And then, finally, the tomb, or a pit, or a crevice in the hills, depends on what your family could afford. You're lowered in, sealed up, forgotten, except you're not. Not really. Because if the embalmer got it right, and the priest said the words, and the jars weren't cursed, and no one reused your shroud from someone who owed taxes, you might actually make it. You might wake in the field of reeds, your heart light as air, your body whole again. And if not, and if not, you rot in silence, with a scarab on your chest and regret in your soul. They told you heaven would be green, not gold, not clouds, not endless wine and women, just green, endless fields of waving reeds, fat with grain, wrapped in warm wind and soft silence. You laughed the first time you heard it. After all, your life has been nothing but sand, sweat, and thin bread. How could eternity look like more labor? But now, as your soul steps into the duat, the shadowy road between worlds, you understand. Green means peace. Green means fullness. Green means you made it. You walk barefoot along cool earth. Your body doesn't ache anymore. Your back isn't bent. Your skin isn't sunburnt or peeling. You feel clean in a way you never did in life. Like the gods rinsed your past off with sacred water and left you new. Then you see the scales. Anubis stands waiting, jackal head tilted, eyes unreadable. Beside him, the goddess Ma'at, calm and terrifying, holds her feather, the one that will be weighed against your heart. You try not to think about every lie, every theft, every curse mumbled under your breath when no one was listening. Your heart is placed on the scale. It thumps once, then stills. The feather floats down beside it. You hold your breath. If the heart is heavier than the feather, Amit, the devourer, will eat it, and you will vanish forever. No afterlife, no second chance, no field of reeds, just nothing, but the scale stays level, balanced. You pass. Suddenly, the duat shifts. You're pulled forward, not by force, but by longing, and there it is, the field of reeds, stretching as far as your new eyes can see. Rich, soft soil, rivers that sparkle, trees that bend toward you as if they recognize your face. You see people you lost, young again, smiling, whole. They wave like they've been waiting centuries for you to arrive. And the strangest part, you have a house, a real one, built strong, with clean mats and no holes in the ceiling. There's food already on the table, figs, fat loaves of fresh bread, a jug of cold beer that tastes like actual wheat, not swamp. You take a bite and don't weep, but only just. There's work here, yes, but it's joyful. You tend a garden that never fails. You sing while harvesting. The sun shines but doesn't burn. The air smells like lotus and rain. You can rest when you want. You can dance You can sleep without fear of rats chewing your toes. Even the gods visit sometimes. You see Hathor dancing on the hilltop, Thoth watching birds with curiosity, Bastet curled in a sunbeam. They nod when they pass you, not like masters, like neighbors, because here, finally, you're not a servant, you're not starving, you're not afraid, you're not unfinished. You are blessed, and it took your entire life, a dozen prayers, a ritual that almost didn't happen, and luck no one could guarantee. But you made it. You are in the field of reeds now, and for the first time ever, you are home.